Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Hope you're all doing well. Now, today I've got a very special guest, and it has been a while since Dan Potts has been on my channel, and I thought, why not get him to talk a bit about what's been going on recently. Thank you for coming on my channel, Dan. How are you doing?
Good, so listen, pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. Happy New Year to you all and all of your listeners, because it's been a while since we've last spoke. To be fair, on a podcast together, so it's good to come on and chat to you, darling.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you on. I'm just sad we're not talking on better terms with Arsenal winning, but yeah, it's not great to be an Arsenal fan. I just wanted to get your thoughts a bit about what's been going on right now. We have lost quite a few games. I think we've only won one of our last 7 games as well, which obviously is not great. And we're out of the FA Cup. Just talk to me a bit about how you're feeling about it all.
Yeah, listen, I'm depressed like every other Arsenal fan is right now
Yeah.
watching football, and I feel like we had such a promise on the back end of last season to go and get Declan Rice and try and do something in the summer window. And I just feel like we failed there. I feel like that we were left a little bit weaker. And when I suggested that, of course, a lot of people got on the back of me and said I was being negative. But I just kind of thought that we were a lot weaker in certain positions. And I feel like every department at the moment you look at needs one or two players in the squad to strengthen it up, either to add to it or to upgrade on what we've already got. So I feel like we're in a position that I kind of expected us to be at some point this season. Unfortunately, it's come a lot earlier than I expected. We've not even got towards the new year in 24 before it's started to crumble. Now, the thing that frustrates me so far over the last few years in Arteta's reign is that we've had these cluster of results every season, whether we're going for top four, title, or we're in a situation now where we're competing again. And I feel like there's always that we go back to. We always have the Brighton, Southampton, and Palace losses that didn't get us top four last season. You can go to the cluster of West Ham, Liverpool, and of course Southampton again. And we thought that's what lost us the title. And already we're talking about West Ham and now, of course, Fulham and Liverpool being out of the competition. So I think personally, going into 2024, darling, there's a lot of pressure on Mikel Arteta now to turn this round. He's the manager. They're his players. He spent a lot of money. He's got to get it right. So that's where I'm at the moment.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I know that a lot of people, especially online, have questioned Arteta, and I think at this moment, I do think it's fair. I mean, for me personally, I'm going to see how we go at the end of the season. I mean, I did think we did have a good chance with the league, and I still think what we do in January is a big part to play in that. If we did bring a few players in, that would change things, but I don't see that happening. I don't really know what we'll do in January, but yeah, I do get why people are questioning Arteta, because if you look at the players we've brought in, I see it as they're not necessarily players that are a priority to us. They're just players that are good signings. They're not really what we need right now. Um, I did want to ask you about that. Obviously, we know Havertz has come in. Declan Rice is, for me, I think he's been worth every penny, and for that, you can give credit for that. I know Reyes came in, and it's a weird one with Ramsdale, because I didn't look at the goalkeeper situation and think we need to resolve that first. That's our first problem, because I feel like the midfield, the left back position, and all of that is more of a priority. But what do you make of the signings that Arteta's brought in for this season?
Well, I agree with you. I think Declan Rice has been absolutely phenomenal. And I do think, although the last couple of games, Arsenal have been iffy, overall this season, the half of it, he's been our best player. I think him, Gabriel, and Saliba have been mentioned, and rightly so. I think the three of them have been phenomenal in some games. I look at what Declan Rice has brought to us, and I'm really happy. But unfortunately, he's been part of one of the worst transfer windows we've had in a long time. And I'll say that because although he's been the best player, and I was happy to get him this window, and it's unlucky with Timber, we've added to that Havertz and Raya, and also left a lot of gaps. We got rid of Kieran Tierney, which no one really understood why. Yeah, he's not playing, he doesn't play the inverted role, etc., etc. But we've been left short in that position, which is now why we have to play Kivior there. We knew Tomiyasu was going to Asian Cup. We knew that with the injury of Timber, we still had Tierney there. We should have said to him, look, I appreciate you don't want to be here, and I appreciate you're not got much game time, but we need you, man, because we're going to lose
Yeah.
players in January. Unfortunately, he's been allowed to stay out on loan and move out on loan to start with. In the department of midfield, we knew Partey would be injured again, and we didn't do anything other than keep Jorginho and El Neni there. So although Rice has been brought in, that number
Yeah.
8 to replace Xhaka, which should have been Rice, has now been left open for anybody. Havertz has had to go there, Smith Rowe, Fabio Vieira. We've seen Trossard play there as well. Some people have been calling for Zinchenko to move in there next. I'm thinking, why don't we just go and buy number 8? Now, I know we've been linked with Onana, And I'm not so sure that he's an 8 either. I think he's more of a, well, I suppose he's a box to box, to be fair to him, 6 or an 8. And up top, we've been left, and right wing, we've been left. So now what we've got, Soph, is we've got Jesus injured. We're having to play Eddie or Havertz there because we didn't actually replace get a striker. We didn't replace a Balogun. Then on the right side of midfield, Saka's had to play every single game and looks poor now because we haven't got any
Yeah.
replacement for him. And then we've got Havertz, who's being forced into about 4 positions because he can't play any of them. So I don't actually feel like we've got stronger at all. And if I'm honest with you, when people say to me, we've had a 9 out of 10 window, I don't know what they're smoking because for me, it's a 5 or a 6. And I feel Declan Rice is part of that 5 or 6. He was the one that lifted it from off. Without Rice, it would have been about a 3. So it's really tough for me to get behind what's happening in this summer transfer window. And I need to see a better one in January, which of course is tough because we've got 4 or 5 holes. We've got a striker, a winger, a central midfielder, a centre back, some people are saying, and a fullback. I mean, we're talking about 4 or 5 positions now. People are saying we need it when in the summer when it shut, people were giving it a 9 and a 10 out of win. I don't know how these fan base work sometimes.
I wouldn't ever give that a 10 personally.
It's
It
mad,
just
isn't it?
doesn't. I think at the time, because we signed Declan Rice, you kind of have that hype about him. I mean, Declan Rice has been worth every penny, but I think with the Havertz one, it's a difficult one because it is a lot of money, 65 million. And yes, he has really scored in like the Brentford game where we really needed him to turn up, which he has done. And in the FA Cup game, I thought he did well other than score, but we need him there to score. And it is a difficult one because I look at that and think, could that money have gone to a striker, gone to the midfield? In what positions we need it for. But for you, the Havertz signing, what have you made of it so far?
I've been disappointed. I think he had a good back end of November, but other than
Mhm.
that, I'm yet to see much from him. I'm not too sure what his attributes are because a lot of people say that he's tall so he can head the ball. Well, I've seen him miss from 5 yards with his head. A lot of people say he's technically gifted. I haven't really seen any flair from him or taking on players, dribbling past, shooting from long distance, curling one in the top corner. So I don't know what technically good he's supposed to be. I don't know his position, Soph. I don't know if he's a number 9, a number 10, attacking
Yeah,
8.
so
I'm still shocked if he's a wide man. I have no idea. And for £65 million, it looks a bit silly now when we're lacking a striker and we need a right winger. And potentially, when you look at who we could have had in place of him, I was crying out for Kudos or Diaby on the right hand side. I was crying out for James Maddison all season of last season and the season before that. And he's now ended up going to bloody Tottenham for 40 million, which is a steal. We've got other players like Cole Palmer and Soboslai and Alexis McAllister that have all gone along those lines for around about 35 to 40 million pounds. And we've spent almost double that on Havertz, and he can't do, in my opinion, half of what the others can do. So it's a really strange run from Mikel Arteta. I'm yet to see how it's going to work. I do feel like when he comes to an end of his Arsenal career, he'll probably be put in the bracket of a Pepe or a Mustafi already.
yeah.
You know, people will say, that's really harsh. He's hardly kicked a ball for Arsenal. Well, I've seen him for half the season and 3 years at Chelsea on top of this already, and I ain't been impressed, and I'm still not. So I don't know. I think a lot of fans want it to work, and I can understand why that is. Of course, I want it to work. I want him to be scoring 15, 20 goals. But if I'm honest and be looking at realistic opportunities for him, I don't see that happening. And what I will say is, there's a lot of fans that are really, really bigging up the little things that he does. If he chests the ball or passes the ball, oh my God, have you seen that pass? This is unreal. And I don't get that. Like I look at it and I think, right, I'm seeing 11 men do exactly the same thing as him, but we're all hyping him up. It's very bizarre. So maybe they're all praying and hoping that he's going to come good. And I personally just have given up with him. I don't think he's going to be a good enough player for the Arsenal anyway.
Yeah, I think I get what you mean. I mean, I think in the last few games he's played, he's not really been as impactful as he has been in the season. I mean, it had taken a long time to grow into the game. I know when I think Odegaard gave him the penalty to score in one of our games, I did think that would give him more confidence to score. And after a while, he did start to score more for us. But yeah, I think it's a weird one. When we signed him, I was a bit like, I didn't understand why, because at Chelsea, he's been known as the flop. He's been known as the guy that misses all the chances. I know he did score in the Champions League final, which is great for him. But yeah, I'm with you. I feel like I want it to work like you do, as all Arsenal fans do. But I just feel like the striker position hasn't been addressed when it's really obvious that it needs to be. And there's quite a few areas for me that we do need to address. And like you said with Saka, I feel like for me, he has been quite poor recently. and you can't deny he is trying. But I feel like it is a bit on like Edu Arteta for not bringing other players in to give him that rest. And for you in like the January window, we do know we need a striker, but do you think what other positions for you realistically do you think we need to target?
So there's two parts to that question, really. What do we need and what will we get, I suppose? What I feel we need is actually quite a few positions covered. You know, I
Yeah,
do. I still think that there's no replacement for the following players. Saliba, I don't see a replacement for him unless we have to push one of our right backs across, like Ben White. I don't see a replacement for Saka that's adequate enough. I think Nelson comes on and tries his heart out, but it ain't going to cut the mustard for me. I think up top we're clearly short, so that's three positions, and I still feel another midfielder with a party issue is going to
yeah,
cause issues. So I feel like there's four positions. So I think we'll get two covered. I don't think we're going to get a striker. I'm sorry. I really don't. I don't think there's one available that Arsenal believe they either can afford or want to pay the money for. Ivan Toney looks too expensive. So does Vlahovic. So does the likes of Victor Osimhen. I don't think that's going to happen. There's rumours of Amadou Onana from Everton. So midfield is a position that we're looking at. And if I'm honest, if we were to bring him in, I would scratch my head a bit and think, why did we not put that towards Ivan Toney with the money we're spending on him apparently of 50 million? But
yeah,
I would say that it's a position we, of course, of need. And people say to me, what would you rather get? Well, bro, we need two. We need a striker and a midfielder. It's not about getting one. We got to get both
yeah,
in. So I can see us doing something across the back four, something that may be a stopgap, a little bit like Kivior was, I suppose. I know he's not really a stopgap, but you get what I mean, like a
yeah.
midfielder player coming in like that no one's really heard of. And then I think a midfielder, and that'll be it. I honestly believe that will be it, a midfielder and a centre back, and we'll be left short up top and in the other positions I've mentioned. So I am worried, Soph. I am.
Yeah, me too. And I know we do leave our business to the last minute, which doesn't help because we have got a bit of a break now, which I actually am glad for because I can't deal with the stress right now watching Arsenal. But yeah, I think for me, like I would love a striker because we do need one. It's clear to see we are, especially in the FA Cup game, we were doing well, we were playing really well, and you could see the change in how we were playing. But it's not just a striker because all of our players just can't score. Martinelli obviously did give it a good go, but Saka's struggling to score. Like Reece Nelson as well. Woods, I think he did have a few good opportunities, but I suppose because he doesn't play, if he plays more, maybe he'll take more of them chances. But I do think we do have to address the striker one. But yeah, I mean, Onana's been linked to us for 50 million, and I have heard that Arsenal have only got that much money to spend, and I'm thinking I'd rather spend that on a striker, which is clear to see that we need. But I think for us to make money as well, we will have to sell some of our players. I know that we've still got Cedric. I still don't know how he's still at Arsenal. We've got El Neni, we've got Nketiah and a load more. For you, of players that you think we should move on, especially to make money, which players do you feel like we should kind of move on, whether that will be in January or in the summer?
So players I think we should accept offers for, if any come in. Cedric, of course.
Yeah,
Mohamed El Neni. I know he's in Africa, but if anybody did want to go and take him, then I'm going to say yes to it. Fabi Vieira. I don't understand what this player is. £35 million, and I've hardly seen him do anything in an Arsenal shirt yet. Reece Nelson and Eddie Nketiah. I don't know what is telling me no about this player, but I would potentially consider Smith Rowe if he isn't in the plans of Arsenal Football Club. So what I mean by that is if somebody's coming in and offering silly money, like let's say 35 million for Smith Rowe, I think it would be foolish for Arsenal to turn that down due to his injury record of the last 18 months.
yeah,
Um, but otherwise, I wouldn't cry seeing any of those players that I've mentioned go. The other ones you can look at is Kivior, but and then Ketia. But at the moment, we're so short in those positions. I think it would be
yeah,
crazy because we're supposed to be adding strength in depth and not just replacing. Now, don't get me wrong. There's some positions we can replace and upgrade. For example,
yeah,
if you wanted to upgrade Reece Nelson with a winger like Elise or Pedro Neto, be my guest. But because we're not strengthening in terms of the amount of players, because we actually have 25 odd players, don't we? What we don't have is the quality, and we've got the quantity. And at the moment, we need the quality. And I think for me, if you can upgrade on 4 or 5 of those across the next couple of windows, that just has to be the plan for me. So
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Eddie Nketiah has been linked to Crystal Palace, I think, quite a few times. But I think for me, I would be open to selling him as long as we brought someone in first. Like, because if that didn't work out, we're stuck even worse now. We don't have him as the option. I mean, it is really tough right now with the bench we have. I mean, I know Trossard, if Martinelli as well, they're on the bench. They're sort of who we have to bring on. We don't really have what Man City and Liverpool have right now. We don't really have that world class striker up front, which is really important for us. But I think there's just a lot of players that have been at the club for a while that I think we should just move on. I mean, I know we probably won't get tons of money for the likes of Cedric and Nenny, but I definitely feel like it's really important that we do sell them and yeah, move them on because I think it's going to be really crucial for the league about who we bring in January. And we did mention Arteta before, and it's really hard right now because the league, I think most fans are feeling like it's not likely. And it is really hard because we know they have such a big bench. They have a really good squad, and I think we do, but we also are struggling as well. And I feel like with Arteta, what I've noticed is that he's really starting to make a few mistakes, and I feel like it might affect him in the league. And I just wanted to ask you, we are in the Champions League as well as the league. Do you feel like you can see Arteta bringing success back to the club again?
It sounds so negative, doesn't it? Pessimistic of me to say, but I just don't think it will happen this season, Sophie, because
Yeah,
I always thought Manchester City would win the league, and that was me expecting Arsenal to be similar to where we were last year. And we've gone backwards this year, there's no doubt about that.
yeah,
Manchester City, to be fair to them, haven't really started yet, and look at them. They're not exactly behind us, are they? Like by much. So when I look at when Man City do kick into gear in the latter parts of this season, I think they'll walk the league now. I think it will be probably 9 points at least that they'll win the league by, and it might even be that Liverpool get closer than Arsenal at the moment. So things can change in football very quickly. As for the Champions League, Mikel Arteta has an abysmal record in Europe. If you look at his European record, it's really poor at Arsenal, and I would say that at the moment with the form we're playing, I'm not confident we'll get through two legs against Porto. Now, I hope that changes and I'm wrong and
yeah,
we go through it. But I just don't see Arsenal winning the Champions League because of who we have to come up against: Manchester City, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich. And then you can add other teams that are still in there that are playing well, such as Leipzig and PSG and teams like that. Barcelona are still in there, Napoli. So these are going to be difficult competition. If we can't beat West Ham and we can't beat Fulham, we're going to struggle against those teams big time. So we have to look at ourselves. We're in Dubai now. And if Arteta wants anything to change when he comes back, he needs to look at what was working last season. Because what was
mm,
working last season isn't just everyone sussed us now. There's
yeah,
two parts to that. When you do get sussed in a game of football, it is 90 minutes. You might get sussed for 5 or 10 minutes, but you have to change it up so that you then make sure that they've sussed us on this. We've got to change our way of playing. And unfortunately, I'm not so sure that he's got the experience or the tactical nous to know how to do that. And he's proven to me against teams that come in of a low block that he hasn't got no knowledge of how to get through these teams to pick up 3 points. So I do worry for the Champions League and Premier League. And that was why I was even more incredibly frustrated when we went out of both the domestic cups this year, because I really felt like it was time for him to win something with this team. Because you can say he's won an FA Cup, that's great, but it
yeah.
wasn't any of these players that won it. It was the old Emery lot that won this cup with Aubameyangs and with Kalasanach's and Mustafi, Luiz, the list goes on. I look at it now, I think that this is a much better side on paper than that was. So that means we should be winning, right? We should be successful. So that's what I need to be seeing this season. I don't think it will happen. And there's context as to how that doesn't happen for my next question, which is what happens to the manager, which I'm sure we'll touch on. Because for me, there's two different scenarios there with how you lose and go out of competitions for what should happen to Mikel Arteta.
Yeah, I was going to touch on that because I know that in the Champions League, I did want to ask you a bit about, the rest of the season, about what for you would be acceptable to finish in both them competitions because people are questioning the manager if we don't win anything this season, should he go? And I've said for me, it does depend on what we do in January, but I've very much said I think if we got to like the semi-finals of the Champions League, which feels like not like it's not going to happen, I've said that if we do challenge Liverpool, Man City to the end, and if we get that far in the Champions League, I feel like it's obviously not success, but because of where we are right now, the injuries, and I think some of Arteta's mistakes, I think that's what I'd be happy with. But what would you be happy with, like as an acceptable season, considering what's going on right now?
So we're only in 2 competitions, so already he's under massive pressure.
Yeah,
He has to title challenge right until the end. None of this 6 games to go and we throw it away rubbish. He has to actually get to the last 2 games of the season and still be able to win the league for me. And he also has to get to a position in the Champions League where it's respectable to be knocked out. And what I mean by that is, doesn't matter where you go, get to a team that is respectable, like Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, and Man City, and lose to them if you have to, going out fighting, going out on penalties, going out with a aggregate scoreline that unfortunately you've just missed out by a goal. Because there's no shame in going out to Real Madrid in Europe. There's no shame to going out to the team that have just won the Champions League in Man City. But what there is shame is when we go and do a Bayern Munich and lose 5-1. That's where there's a shame. So if we were to get in the semi-final, like you say, and we lost to Bayern Munich, Real Madrid, or Man City by that loss, 5-1s or 4-0s, it's not looking good for him. I honestly believe that we will probably come in the top 4 this season, and I think we'll probably get to maybe the quarters of the Champions League. And I don't think that's good enough to keep Mikel Arteta, because we need to look at where we're going and where we come from. Because if we're rewarding top 4 and quarterfinals of Champions Leagues and dumping out of cups, what the hell did we get rid of Arsene Wenger for? We might as well have just kept him, because he was doing that every year. So we need to look at ourselves at
yeah,
where we're going. And you can look at that in a negative way, because you can spin it and say, well, what happens if he wins us the double this year and he wins us the Premier League and Champions League? Go do it. And I'll praise you and I'll say, wow,
yeah,
where was I looking? I was looking wrong, because, yeah, we had a blip, but look at him. He's turned it round. This team looks like it wants it. It's hungry. It's flying. It's killing everybody. We're smashing teams. Fair play. But until that happens, I'm going to have my doubts. And Mikel Arteta put a lot of people in the mud last season. He proved a lot of people wrong. He didn't just prove the fans that doubted him wrong and the media that doubted him wrong. He actually proved the fans that really rated him wrong, because they never thought we'd be in the title race. They thought that we'd be top 4 and we'd fight for top 4 again. But everybody that liked what we were doing, none of them said we'd win the league. None of them. So when I look at it now, I think, yeah, he's proved a lot of people wrong. But everything that's happened that's gone wrong this season, Soph, lands on his door. The goalkeeping situation, not buying
yeah,
enough cover at the back, keeping Zinchenko, who can't defend, and selling Tierney, who can defend, not replacing Partey when he gets injured again, not giving cover for Rice, Saliba, Saka, or Jesus, not getting a striker to upgrade on Eddie, and not getting a winger to upgrade on Nelson, and buying Havertz with the money that could have done some damage to half of that. So there's a lot of stuff that he's done, which he just didn't need to do. This change of style, he didn't need to change the style. We were whooping teams. So
yeah.
there's a lot of stuff that he's done that's going to be questions now.
Yeah, I agree. I do think this season we have our style of play has changed. I think at the start of the season, when we beat like United, when Declan Rice scored that goal, I felt very much like we were showing that we can win by playing ugly football. Like we won't always play that pretty football, and we were showing that we can do that. But I just feel like recently, I just feel like we're at a bit where we're in a rough patch. We're struggling, and questions will be asked by Arteta. I think for me, the players that are on the pitch can score them chances. I do feel like they're good enough to do that. We do need a striker, of course, but I do feel like some blame should go on the players for not taking their chances. But I do feel very much like Arteta. There are questions that I do ask about him because he brings on like Smith Rowe in the 88th minute, and realistically, he's not going to do much when he comes on for 2 minutes. And there are things I do ask about him, and I'm with you. I do feel like this season success was massive, considering last season the way we got so close. I really did think it would be for us, the league, considering the last few seasons before that wasn't that great. I did think that was really good on Arteta for doing that, but I still feel like success should be still here this season. I mean, the Champions League will be tough. I think I'm with you, like if we got to a semi-final or quarter-final, and obviously a quarter-final doesn't sound exciting, but I think if we just make ourselves proud in that and not embarrass ourselves like the Wenger days, which we did. But I do think in the Champions League we have actually been doing decent actually recently, but I know we've still got a long way to go. But yeah, I think with you there are quite a few questions to be asked about, the price tag on players. We could have spent that money in a different area, and I know defensively as well, like if Saliba or Gabriel gets injured, we're in big trouble, and there's a lot of areas we could address. Um I know you did mention about the goalkeeper situation, and Ramsdale for me last season did really well. I know we did have a few mistakes in some games, but I think for most of it, I feel like he was excellent, especially considering, the few seasons before he's really came in, he's grown as like a player, and it's been great to see that. And obviously this season Raya's came in, and I feel like for me Arteta rates Raya a lot more than Ramsdale. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on the goalkeeper situation and whether or not you think Ramsdale should come back in the team.
So I think first of all, when it happened, I was happy with it. And I'll tell you
Yeah,
why. A lot of people weren't happy with it. I was happy with it because I thought David Raya was going to come in and fight for his place. Didn't think he was going to be given it. I think having two goalkeepers is always difficult, and it will only last for 1, 2 seasons max, because one of them will get annoyed and go play first team football. But I've absolutely no problem with upgrading on Matt Turner with David Raya. That wasn't the issue. It was how it was done for me, so which was wrong. And I think Aaron Ramsdale deserved to stay in goal, and Raya deserved to fight for his place, not be given it. And when he has had dodgy games, he's just been kept in goal. Aaron Ramsdale was good against Liverpool. Aaron Ramsdale played well in the games that I've seen him so far this season, other than I think it was the first one he come back in for, where it, of course, looked a bit rusty and a little bit nervous. But other than that, David Raya has made about 6 or 7 errors this season in the first 19 games, and Aaron Ramsdale's not made them over 2.5 years. So for me, Aaron Ramsdale is the better goalkeeper. And unfortunately for David Raya, he's found out that it's different playing for Brentford than it is for Arsenal. And
yeah.
I think with David Raya being number one at Arsenal, I'm just not as confident. Now, I think he will remain number one, and I think Aaron Ramsdale will be sold either in January or the summer. But I do feel like it's a big mistake. I'm a big fan of Ramsdale. When you replace him, you need to upgrade on him, and we haven't. We've replaced him with someone who's probably as good, and if not a little bit worse. When Liverpool and Manchester City upgrade their goalkeepers to Ederson and Alisson, you really saw a difference. And I'm not so sure we will with David Raya.
Yeah, it is a tough one. I think with Raya, I know in one of our Champions League games earlier on, I did think his performance was really good. He has had some really good performances. I know in the Spurs game he didn't make a great save, but I feel like as time has gone on, I don't know if he's like struggling with the pressure because he has made quite a few mistakes. And I do think he's a good goalkeeper. I think they're both two good goalkeepers, but I personally, I'm not really sure if I think Raya is an improvement of Ramsdale. I feel like if I had the choice, or if you had the choice, I personally would pick Ramsdale to come back. I think in the FA Cup game, I think that save he made, I think it was Tonight Diaz or one of the players. I don't know if I think Raya would make that save and that pass to Reece Nelson. I'm not sure if Raya would do that. I just feel like when I was watching Arsenal in the FA Cup, it reminded me of the old Arsenal from last season. And maybe that's due to Ramsdale coming back. I know he does help the defenders. He's quite vocal with that. So it'll be interesting. I do feel like when Arteta's made his mind up, you can't really convince him, and he gets stuck to his decisions, which can be a good thing sometimes. But I do think it's quite frustrating as well because I do think Ramsdale does deserve more playing time. I think Raya, like you said, even when he has a bad game, Arteta does play him, even when he might not necessarily deserve that other opportunity. But it has surprised me this season that Ramsdale has been dropped completely, and I do feel like if he doesn't, get more opportunities, I think he will go in the summer. And I don't really blame him because I know for England as well, he was starting to get a few opportunities there. And I think if he wants to have a good career for England as well, he should probably leave. I think it's not really fair on him to be the second choice goalkeeper because I feel like he's good enough to be a number one. So it will be interesting to see what happens at Crystal Palace. I think for me, I expect Raya to play, but it would be good to see Ramsdale play. And I know we did mention a bit before about Smith Rowe, and we know he's obviously had quite a few injuries, which is obviously unfortunate because a few seasons back he was such an important player for us up there with Bamyang and Saka. But for you, like, I don't get why Arteta doesn't give him like a lot of game time. I'm not saying Smith Rowe would completely change everything for us in the game, but do you feel like it's a bit unfair that Arteta doesn't give him a bit more minutes, or do you think it's understandable considering he's had a few injuries?
Well, listen, first of all, we don't know what Smith Rowe's doing in training or how fit he
Yeah.
is. So that's the first thing to consider. But when you look at the fairness and how much game time and minutes other players are getting, I do question what he's doing with Smith Rowe. And I do wonder why he's bringing him on so late. In the Liverpool game, he had about 3 minutes. It was ridiculous.
Ridiculous.
Um, yeah, Reece Nelson's now got ahead of him. Trossard is already ahead of him. Vieira was ahead of him. Havertz is ahead of him. Odegaard's ahead of him. I think he might have to go, if he wants to get a place at Arsenal. It's not going to happen, is it? So I'm a big fan of what Smith Rowe did, but perhaps Mikel Arteta's looking at that thinking that was good enough to get us Champions League. I don't think he's good enough for a title. I disagree with the players getting ahead of him because I don't think they've been any better than Smith Rowe. But unfortunately, the manager looks like he's made his mind up with Smith Rowe and he's really at the back of the pecking order in comparison to where he was at the start of a couple of seasons ago, where he was our top scorer with 12 goals. So I think there's a talent there. If he can stay fit, I think another team will do well. If he went to a Palace or a West Ham or a Brighton, I think he'd do really well if he was given first team football. But it's not going to happen for him at Arsenal now. I don't think so. I don't think so. I think we're looking in other directions at other players ahead of him now. And I don't think there's any reason to suggest that he's just not in Arteta's plans because he's fit, he's ready to play, and he's not playing. And that shows what the manager really does think of him, I think.
Yeah, it's a weird one. I mean, I'm with you. Like, I think you don't really know, regarding his fitness, if he can play more than we want him to. But I think it must be hard for him only coming on for a few minutes in a cup game as well, because I know that he loves Arsenal and it will mean a lot to him to help us, help the team. But yeah, it's a frustrating one. I mean, it would be hard to see him go because he has mentioned about wanting to be like a legend at a club, and I know people have said that before, but I know that he's obviously came for the academy and he just really loves his club. So I think for me, I would understand if he left, considering that he only gets a few minutes here and there. But it is a bit like confusing because I know a few players get more time over him that I think might not deserve that. So yeah, I think if we did get some money for Smith Rowe, it would be good. But yeah, it would be quite a hard one to take. But I think considering that he doesn't really get many minutes as well, I think it'd probably be the right decision for him. And I could definitely see him doing well at like a Brighton, like you said, or a West Ham, because I think, yeah, he needs more game time for sure. So it will be really interesting to see what happens. And the January transfer window, is crucial. And I know we do have Crystal Palace in a little while. And I don't think we'll sign anyone by then. Obviously, hopefully we will. But for you, regarding like on number 9, we know that we are a bit short on that. I know Jesus is injured. I don't know if he'll be back. But we know we've got Eddie Havertz has obviously tried that position. We've got Trossard too. But for you, who would you kind of put in that position for that game? Because I see it as it's a must win. Like, if we don't lose that, I just don't know where we will go from there, because we're just losing too much.
Yeah, we are. We really are. Listen, I'm not Eddie's biggest fan. I'm not Kai Havertz's biggest fan. So for me, it
Yeah.
has to be Leandro Trossard in that false 9. And then we go with Martinelli and Saka either side of him. The last time we saw that regularly was the back end of last season towards the March time. And we were doing really well. We were flying high. Trossard got player of the month. I think Arteta might have even got manager of the month. Saka and Martinelli and Odegaard were all scoring goals surrounding him. Trossard was getting assists. I think he got 3 assists in the first half at Craven Cottage away last season. And we know how difficult that is to go there. The other week we lost there. So for me, I would play Leandro Trossard there. I prefer him in that false 9 role, believe it or not, than I do on the wing. I think there's a lot of people like it the other way around. But for me, I like Trossard as a player, either position. But if you was to give me an opportunity to put one of them in, I would put him ahead of Kai Havertz and Eddie. If I'm honest with you, though, I think until the midfield is back and injury less, I think Havertz will play up there now.
Yeah, that'll be interesting, really. I mean, I think it's quite hard. I think with Eddie, there's games where he can really make a difference, and then there'll be games where he'll be playing for like 80 minutes and you don't even know he's playing. So I think with the options we have right now, it is quite difficult. And I do quite like Trossard. I think for me, for some reason, when he comes off the bench, at times he makes more of an impact for whatever reason. He reminds me of like Giroud when he used to come on and help score goals. But yeah, I think we do really need to address that situation, and I really do hope we do that. But it was really lovely to chat with you today, Dan. I know it's been a while since we've spoken, and just a shame we're not winning at the moment, but
Yeah.
hopefully Crystal Palace will start winning. But thank you for coming on. Do you want to let people know where they can find you? Because I know you do have your own like podcast now.
Listen, thank you so much for having me on. It's been a pleasure. Make sure you do me a favor, people, and smash a like and subscribe to Sophie's channel. And if you do want to come follow myself, you can at Dan Arsenal 87 on all socials. And if you do want to come and follow my podcast and my channel on YouTube, then it's Football's 12th Man podcast. So make sure that you come follow that. We're up to around about 14K. We're just touching now. So come and support. That'd be amazing to see you guys over there. And big up, Sophie. Thank you for having me on.
No, always love chatting with you. It's always good fun. But hopefully we'll start getting back to winning ways. And I hope hope you guys that watch this back have really enjoyed this and do show love to Dan on his channel because he's doing great things. But yeah, I'll be back very soon. Hope you all had and enjoyed this video we did, and I'll see you all very soon.